Hi, I'm Rod Chappell. Welcome back to the Rod Chappell Show. We're excited to have you today. Here in the holiday season, we're thinking about the intersection of law and faith. Now, for many people, the idea of combining church and state is a no-no. And certainly if we're spending public funds, that's correct. But when it comes to how the citizenry will interact with their government, I think there's no better place to start. And talking about starting, we couldn't have a better cast than we have today. We have Reverend Bennet and Reverend Hendricks. Thank you both for being here with us today.
It's my pleasure, Rod. Glad to be with you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Joy to be here.
Why don't you introduce yourselves to the community? There might be a couple of people, maybe in Jeff City or mid-Missouri, that don't know you right off. Reverend Bennet.
I'm Reverend John Bennet, a disciple of Christ, retired pastor. I retired from Missouri School of Religion Center for Rural Ministry. I was the administrator there and taught some courses. Our main educational mission was training lay people for ministry in small rural congregations. We were also a continuing education center for clergy. So it was an exciting place to be, and I was there a total of 13 years and retired in 2005 and looking for things to do and stayed involved ecumenically and involved, as we'll discuss in a moment, with the issue of Medicaid expansion.
Absolutely.
And I'm a member and elder emeritus as of Sunday.
Congratulations.
First Christian Church in Jeff City.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah. Reverend Hendricks.
Well, Rod, of course, it's a great day to be with you on the show today. Adrian Hendricks, I pastor the Joshua House Church, and we fortunately have been a church plant here in Missouri over the last 5 years, really doing a wonderful work in a community that really needs to be served, and so we've been delighted to do that. I've been a resident here for 23 years, came as a Lincoln University student. I fortunately graduated,
Yes.
made my way on out, and
Yeah.
basically got married, had 3 wonderful kids, and have been in ministry for going on 20 years now. And so, in 1996, I received my call into ministry, and once I got scared straight, we've been rolling ever since. And so we've been really delighted to plant here and really looking forward to making and continuing to make impact in Jefferson City. And so glad to be with you.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you. Well, so in looking at how law and faith can intersect, we as citizens have certain rights and obligations. If you think under the philosophical analysis of like a John Locke, not only do we get to act, but we get to be acted upon as part of our agreement, our social contract, if you will. Some of that includes voting, jury service. It talks about our ability to interact with our government, whether in an administrative or executive capacity. One way that I know that you, Reverend Bennet, have been engaged is with the Medicaid expansion fight. Can you tell me what led you to the fight, and let's talk about where that's taken us.
Well, my involvement goes back several years, in fact, to 2005, when Governor Matt Blunt took 500,000 people off the Medicaid rolls, and devastating. And I remember coming to a Capitol rally and speaking from I was then the director of Missouri School of Religion Center for Rural Ministry, and I predicted it would have a devastating impact on rural communities. And my prophecy was unfortunately true.
Well, in terms of that impact, are we talking about people who don't have access to health care and poor outcomes?
Yes. The issue currently, because of the lack of Medicaid expansion, it is estimated that 300,000 Missourians, hardworking, low-income Missourians, do not have access to health care. Many of those adults would include children in their families as well. So it's a great social issue, devastating problem. And of that number, approximately 700 die annually for want of the health care which Medicaid expansion could provide. Roughly 15 citizens from Missouri every week die for want of health care which Medicaid expansion could supply. I've said, and I've been involved in this coalition of clergy for a number of years, and our rallying cry is to say Medicaid expansion is a moral imperative. There's no question about that. And so we took the issue to the chambers of the Senate in 2014 as the session was nearly over, and made a faith witness from the chambers, 23 clergy from all over the state. We prayed and sang and chanted and made a witness and were arrested. And in August of this year, went on trial and were the charges against us were obstruction of government operations, and the second
was it trespass?
Trespass. That's right. That's the one that we were accused and charged with, and in fact, through the 4-day court process, we were absolved of the obstructing government operations, but the charge of trespassing remained with us. Yeah.
Now, and so let me just make sure I got this right. You were arrested for praying and chanting Bible verses, I presume?
That's right.
And singing, I can only imagine, gospel songs or religious songs?
Yes, yes.
In the state capitol?
In the state capitol.
Wow.
Yeah. Is that what usually happens when people pray in the state capitol? It seems like they open up every order of business with a prayer.
Yeah, they do, but our particular form of prayer they did not appreciate. We were in the gallery of the chambers, were asked to leave, but we had prearranged that we would not do so until the government, the Capitol Police, tapped us on the shoulder. Then we would leave. And so when that happened, we all did, and they processed us, and 6 months later, we received notice from the prosecutor in the county that we were charged with.
Well, we may have to devote another show into the booking process, what happens when you get booked, and how that can happen right before your eyes without you being absolutely certain that that's what's happening.
Yeah.
Well, that's excellent. That's excellent, and I think that we're probably at a breaking point. But tell me, before we go, what is it that led you as a man of faith to this particular issue and to address it in that way?
Well, the fact that people are dying for want of health care which should be provided, in our system of government, we should care for for the least of these that comes out of our, excuse me, out of our faith traditions. And so that was the primary motivator for me. And I've been in ministry for over 50 years, and I've preached the social gospel for all of those years, and thought it was time to act on it by taking that action.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. And can you gentlemen stay with us for another segment?
Be glad to.
Yes.
Okay. All right. All right. Well, thanks for joining us on the Rod Chapel Show. We've just heard from Reverend John Bennet, a well-known figure here in mid-Missouri, not only for his works in the church, but also outside. Please join us on our next segment as we hear from Reverend Hendricks. And we're going to talk more about this intersection, this unique, conjoined place of law and faith.
I'm Ann Littlefield,
I'm Claudia Kehoe.
and we're here to represent the Food Bank of Central and Northeast Missouri. Over half of the Missouri students qualify for free or reduced lunches at school during the week.
But on the weekends, many children go home to empty refrigerators.
The food bank provides buddy packs, backpacks full of nutritious food, so over 6,600 hungry children have food on the weekends.
But the need is much greater. Will you help?
When you adopt a buddy, you reach out to a child in need. Your 50 cents a day will make a difference in a child's life.
Visit www.sharefoodbringhope.org or call the food bank, 573-474-1020 to adopt a buddy.
Hi, I'm Rod Chaplin. Thanks for joining us for another segment of the Rod Chapel Show. Today we are continuing our discussion that we began with Reverend Bennet, now to talk again with Reverend Hendricks about the unique intersection of law and faith in our society. Reverend Hendricks, Reverend Bennet, thank you both for another segment.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
Good to be here.
Thanks. Reverend, I know that you, not only through your work in the community, but also as a man of faith, have lent your considerable time and talents to social issues.
Yes.
And I'll just name it Amendment 6. I might just ask you kind of to tell us what that is and why it's important.
Absolutely. You know, first let me say that there has been a tremendous responsibility for clergy to be involved and engaged in social issues. Historically, we've been many times on the forefront of making change and advocating for change. And so when the issues on Amendment 6 came up, we felt that there was something that needed to be done, because we understand that there's a community who will be directly affected by these changes. And so Amendment 6, in our view, restricts some of the flexibility, the freedom of our citizens to vote, to have easy access to initiate change on the behalf of their government and their views on government. And so this became a problem. And it's interesting to me that we continue to see legislation and efforts that brings new barriers to the lives of our community. And so I began to work with the NAACP and with other organizations around the state so that we can really look at how we can kind of mediate some change that would keep our system as free and flexible as Pastor Bennet said, for the least of these.
Right.
And so that's
Right.
really where we began to look at this Amendment 6 issue and really find ways to try to put a halt on that. Unfortunately, we were not as successful as we would have liked to be, but we know that this work is necessary, and clergy as leaders in their community must be engaged.
That's right. That's right. Well, and it seems like Amendment 6 in particular, the stripping of the right to vote out of the Constitution is different, because if we as American citizens don't have a right to dictate where our tax dollars are being spent at, that seems like something that is vastly akin to some place that we left or fought to get away from.
Exactly. And so we have seen throughout history from the era of the 1960s and even before then, but the eras of the 1960s, an active involvement of the faith community on change initiatives because the rights of the masses, the rights of the oppressed were being overlooked.
Right.
And so there's been this relationship between problem and pastor. There's been a relationship between problem and preachers, and pastors and clergy members and the faith community in and of itself have felt the brunt and the burden of that responsibility to go forward and to do something. And so that's where really great organizations, of course, you have the pillar, the NAACP as a pillar of change for the country around the world, working with other organizations like the Ecumenical Leadership Council, Coalition of Missouri, and other faith voices, and so on and so forth, who were taking the lead and trying to initiate change and really bring education to the forefront so that we all would be informed on the issue, but then continue to do the right thing to fight for these rights. So whether that was worker and employment rights, whether that's voting rights, whether that's health care, Medicaid rights, we are engaged, and we should continue and will continue to be engaged in a way that is for the interest of the people, so that our voice will not be dismissed, but that we will be heard, and that we can actually impact change on those who are responsible for continuing to run our government on the behalf of the people.
Right. A lot of times when we think about church activities, we may say, that at the things that happen on Sundays, maybe for real active things might happen over there on Wednesday.
Yeah.
How large in scope was your effort with Amendment 6?
We have partnered with several agencies to have a statewide effort. And so one of the things that our responsibility was to do was to identify and work with organizations who were vested in this change. But then we began to identify communities around the state. And so we identified about 300 different communities that were high target precincts, really places where there were low turnout historically. And then to engage our partners and other NAACP leaders, our other friends and partners in other organizations, so that we can mobilize different strategies. And so one of those strategies was to, of course, educate. That was to go door to door. That was to have summits, have workshops, have town hall meetings. And we were doing that in several regions, of course, St. Louis, Kansas City, Columbia, Missouri, the Boot Hill, high traffic, high volume locations. But then we also put together things like our Souls to the Polls initiative. These are our Get Out the Vote efforts for transportation, ways that we were really able to identify communities, give them the resources and support that they need, and give them every opportunity to get to the voting booth to initiate change.
That's excellent. Let me ask you, and this may be the last question, and I'm hoping that we can do one more topic after this.
I don't know, Pastor. He's asking a lot. No, please.
Was there something about the role of equality as portrayed through voting and American citizenship that spoke to you as a pastor, as a reverend?
Absolutely. One of the burdens of my heart, I'm sure Pastor Bennet has the same thing. We are very intimately connected to the pain of our community. We hear their issues. We hear their stories. We know particularly which mothers are facing issues in education. We know who are being targeted when it comes down to legal issues and representation, not only in the courtroom, but with police involvement. We are very familiar with that. And if we don't have an active role, and if we don't take an active part in solving problems, then the effectiveness of our ministry is really not speaking to the totality. And so I just believe that there's space for us to get involved, to really lend our voice and to lend our placement towards building bridges, collaborating efforts, and really making the lives of our day-to-day citizen as beneficial, as peaceful as possible. And so we got work to do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thanks for joining us on the second segment in this series of Law and Faith. We have two well-respected reverends with us. We have one more discussion that we're going to have following, and so we hope that you can join us for that segment. Creating bridges, righting wrongs, fixing problems. Clergy and the law. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Kurt Probst, and I am a big brother. Missouri Valley Big Brothers Big Sisters desperately need your help. Right now, more than 50 children are waiting for someone to spend time with them, waiting for a mentor. By spending time with a child, you can change their future and improve their chances of succeeding in life. All it takes is 1 hour a week. Call Missouri Valley Big Brothers Big Sisters at 634-3290 to get involved today. We are proud to be a United Way partner agency.
Hi, I'm Rod Chappell, and thanks for joining us on The Rod Chappell Show. This is the third and final segment of a series entitled Law and Faith, the intersection of law and religion, and what it looks like to have people who are actively engaged in that process. We've heard from Reverend Bennet, who has advocated for years for Medicaid expansion because, as he put it, it's a moral imperative. We've got Reverend Hendricks, who worked diligently on Amendment 6 to ensure that every American, or at least Missourian, had a right to vote, because equality matters, and that has a role in our faith. We're honored to have them as in this final segment, and I'm really asking, gentlemen, what's next? Right? What further work are we doing? What organizations are still moving the ball, and how do we as citizens get engaged to make sure that the laws that govern our land reflect our values?
That's right.
I'm involved with Missouri Faith Voices, which is an organization of approximately 4 years we've been in development. Reverend Cassandra Gould of Quinn Chapel Church here in Jefferson City is our executive director.
Is that the same one I see on CNN sometimes?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yes.
All right.
Yes. But our effort is to address social issues statewide. We've been working the Medicaid expansion issue and also predatory lending. Reverend Gould has taken great leadership on that issue, and others in the organization have been involved in that. And we have in Jefferson City a chapter of Missouri Faith Voices called Faith Voices of Jefferson City. Okay. And Reverend Michelle Scott Huffman is the director of our local effort. And we address issues of social concern in the city. Bus transportation has been an issue we've focused on. There should be, we feel, bus service more hours than 5 days a week, from concluding at about 5 o'clock, as I understand it. Mm-hmm. And that means that a lot of people do not have access to transportation during the weekend, and if they work evening shift, there's a problem. So Missouri Faith Voices addresses statewide issues, and Faith Voices of Jefferson City addresses issues in our local community from the perspective of faith, and it's broadly ecumenical, in fact, even interfaith effort involving the Jewish community and the Muslim community as well. So,
that's perfect. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. Reverend Hendricks, what other things are you working on, or vehicles are you working through?
Well, we just keep the train moving. One of the things that I would love to share with you, we've been working together with Clarence Jackson and Bishop Wooten out of St. Louis. And about 5 years ago, they put together what's called the Ecumenical Leadership Coalition. And the Ecumenical Leadership Coalition, based out of St. Louis, has representation in Kansas City under Bishop Mark Talbert, and the southeast parts of the state with Bishop Ronnie Webb. And last year, this year, we just launched our Central Missouri chapter. And so I've been elected the president of that chapter, and we're looking to recruit, of course, other pastors and clergies in Central Missouri, which is a very large landmass. But what we're doing is finding ways to collectively engage our faith community in issues that are important. And so all of those topics and all those issues that we know are impacting our homes, really using this vehicle to inform those communities, and then also bring those communities' concerns back to local and state leaders to make some adjustment on how things are being done. And so that has been a tremendous effort that's been going on over the last couple of years, and we're excited about that opportunity happening here. And myself and Pastor Charles Jackson of Fulton, Missouri, Guiding Light, and Pastor Cedric Harris of Second Christian Church in Fulton, and others have been really instrumental in doing some of the groundwork and recruiting of the local area. And so that's my first layer.
All right.
But we've been also right here in Jefferson City putting together over this last 2 years what's called the Center for Change and Community Life. And this is a new 501c3 effort which is designed to really provide resources and holistic living, holistic living advocacy, and bringing those resources together that are going to meet the needs of at-risk and high-risk families. And so for young people, building after-school programming for them, bringing entrepreneurship and workshop development skills to the forefront, all of those kinds of things. We've brought ourselves together with a tremendous board of community leaders and others really to tackle some of those things. And so this 2017 calendar, we'll be going really full steam ahead with our fundraising and looking to identify a location, because we believe that we need a community center that is really instrumental in bringing families and holistic programming to our region.
Amen.
And so we know that there are families there that can't afford some of the other places, they just can't afford it. And so we want to be a resource to lift the burdens and help make life better for all of those that are really the least of these.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. Thank you both for
Yes,
being
sir.
on the Rod Chapel Show. I certainly appreciate it. As you know, we try to take legal issues and put them in a way that they make sense to us as regular people. Reverend Bennet here as a member and part of the clergy staff at First Christian Church as an elder there. Reverend Hendricks as a founding pastor of the Joshua House. Certainly appreciate you and all your work. We really do. If you as a member of the community want to get involved, want to be engaged, want to meet these or other reverends, pastors, or clergy as they take that walk, protecting us and our rights, please do so. You can find them on the web. You can find their contact information easily. If nothing else, contact me and I'll make sure that you get to them. The work they do is so vitally important. Thank you both.
Thank you, Rod.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.
Thanks for watching the Rod Chapel Show. Please look for us. We have an exciting 2017 coming up, and topics that we know are going to be interesting to you. If you're concerned about the intersection of law in your life, this is the place for you. Thank you.